Alright, David Harry here. Now, if you are somebody who is considering putting together an external SSD for your Mac, and very specifically you're looking at putting together the fastest thing that you possibly can, you're probably going to be looking at either a USB 4 enclosure or a Thunderbolt 4 enclosure, and pairing either one of these up with a very fast Gen 4 NVMe SSD. Well, if you are that type of person, I strongly recommend that you watch this entire video, because this video has ended up becoming a comparison between the Zike Z666, which is a USB 4 enclosure, compared to the Acasis TBU405Pro M1, which is a Thunderbolt USB 4 enclosure. Now, to be clear, this video did not start off as a comparison video. What this video was meant to have been was a video to show the Zike enclosure running with the Western Digital SN850X 4TB SSD, and I was going to be recommending to people, look, here's a really fast SSD system for you here. So, you know, if you're looking for something with like a lot of like storage and very fast, this is the one for you. Now, the reason why I'd set out to do that video was because in my previous video, I'd paired up the Zike with the 990 Pro by Samsung there, and unfortunately I ran into a problem very quickly of thermal throttling. And when I say very quickly, I'm talking after about 5 minutes. The Zike ended up throttling itself right the way down. Actually, probably not the Zike, it's probably the SSD that throttles itself actually. But nonetheless, it's an issue caused by the Zike because it is only passive cooling. It doesn't have a fan or anything. But what happened, after about 5 minutes or so, the write speeds went way below half of what they were before I started running the tests. So this video was meant to be something where I could kind of give like good news about the Zike to people and go, look, here's a recommendation for something super fast, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, you will clearly see this as the video kicks in, because I'm clearly testing something to show people some great results. The only problem is, after I do the initial kind of like data dumping to the actual drive in order to stress it and then run the test, it went into thermal throttling again, and once again, the write speeds plummeted. Now, at that point, I was dead disappointed. However, I thought to myself, do you know what? I'll turn this into a comparison. So then what I'd done the exact same thing with the Acasis enclosure with the exact same Western Digital SN850X 4TB SSD. And the results are absolutely conclusive. So the bottom line here for anybody who doesn't have the time to look through the testing is the Zike thermal throttled and the Acasis didn't. And the Acasis has obviously got like, you know, active cooling because it's got a fan in it. Now, there's a really good reason why you would want to use something with a fan in when you're using a Gen 4 NVMe, because they tend to run really hot within themselves and will eventually kind of like outpace like the thermal mass of a passively cooled, like, you know, enclosure, which it clearly does do with the Zike. Anyway, just dead quick, let me explain. So what I do, I dump a load of files for like 50 minutes. So that's like a really good test. So I dump the files for 50 minutes on both of the systems, and then I run the speed tests, having already run the speed test before I do the big 50-minute data dump. And that is how I get the difference between when the drive has not done anything compared to after the drive has done some work. Okay, so that's the basic premise for this video. So let me kick into it and I'll come back at the end for a bit of a summary.
Okay, so the first thing that I will do is to format the drive. So let me just copy its name, because I'll give it the same name after the format. Just got to open the disk utility tool here. So I'm just going to select the root of the drive here. Then I'm going to tap on Erase. I will give it the same name. I'm going to format it to APFS using the GUID partition mapping system. And then I'll just tap on Erase there. So that's just going to unmount the drive, do what it's going to do in format, and there we go. So formatted. Okay, now the first thing that I'm going to do at this point is to run a Balckmagic speed test, and this is going to give us a rough idea, like say before I do all the data dumping compared to after the data dumping, what the speeds are registering synthetically, and then I will also then do another physical real world dump after I've done the massive dump, as it were. Okay, so select target, let me come down here, I'll select the Balckmagic there. Let's see, I'll have it on 5 gigabytes as well, so let me just do a few rounds of this. So 3,490 for the write, 3,439 for the read. I'll let this go through a few times and we'll just get a bit of a rough gauge. So 3,490 it looks like, 3,480, let's see, 3,448, okay. Let's see, we'll just do this one more time and then we'll kind of work out a rough average here. I think this is going to be 3,480. Okay, so 3,480 for the write and 3,444 for the read. Okay, now like I say, I'm only doing that just so that we've got something to gauge at the end of the long data dump. Now if you give us a moment, I've just got to bend over a few things here and plug in another SSD. Okay, so I've just plugged in another 4 terabyte SSD here. It should pop up momentarily. There we go. Okay, now inside here there's a bunch of stuff. Now if I just get the, hold on, am I doing this correct? It's Control on a Mac and then right click. There we go. Let's see, get summary info. I keep thinking I'm in Windows world. Right, so as we can see here, 3,738,773 megabytes, and there are 20,736 items on that drive there. So let me just pull this down a little bit here. Now I'm just going to open up the blank disk here. And then what I will do, let's get the stopwatch up here. Now let me just drag and copy these files and then I will just explain some stuff as it starts copying. So where are we? Copy, and then I'm going to do paste 11 items, so paste, start. Okay, so what I am doing here then is to just copy a load of files from this other drive to the Zike with the Western Digital inside of it. Now the reason why I've got the stopwatch on the screen is just so that you can see how long this has been kind of like, you know, copying for. Now just remember, it is the writing process which will heat up the drive the most. So this is the proper stress here, just like, you know, writing to the drive for a considerable amount of time. And in my experience, a considerable amount of time is more than 5 minutes when I had the Samsung 990 Pro inside the Zike enclosure. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just kind of let this go on. Now, I'll see how long it takes to maybe, I don't know, do say half of the files or something, because ideally really we only really need to see this go for like, let's say, longer than say 10 minutes as a for instance, and then that'll give us a really good gauge. But I'll let it go for longer than 10 minutes, but nonetheless, however long I let it go for, this stopwatch here will let you know how long it has been writing for. So let me just speed through this now. So what I'm going to do now is to, let's see, I'll stop that first. Let me just pause the timer. I think I have to click on the X there to stop that. Now straight away, I'm just going to dive into a synthetic. So let me just select the drive there, and I should be on 5 gigabytes. So let's see what happens here. Okay, well, that's very interesting. So the write speed has come, oh wait a minute, I was going to say the write speed has come down, but it's gone back up again. Okay, so let me just give this a couple of goes over. Right, so the write speed is struggling a little bit, the read speed isn't. Let's see what goes on here now with the write. Okay, well, I'm going to have to say then that the write speed is definitely not recovered. Okay, well, that's disappointing, I have to say, because for this particular test, I really did think that I was gonna, like, you know, get like a really good straight run here. Do you know what? Give me a second, because what I'm gonna do now is compare this to one of the Acasis Enclosures. So give me a moment. In fact, if you just give us a second, wait there. I'm just getting a sync point there. So what I'm gonna do is just quickly do a temperature test here. So with the Zike case being used with the Western Digital, on the outside there, it's around 50 degrees Celsius. Let's see down this end here, 49, 50, something like that. Now if you give us a moment, let me just whiz the lid off. We'll get a direct reading off the drive itself. Okay, so that's 60 degrees there, 59. What's it up here? 61, 63, 62. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so 60, about 63, 64. Oh, wait there, 67, 66 up here. Right, one of these chips up here obviously is heating up more than the stuff down here. So we're maximum up here about 70 or so. What it is, the drive's still connected. I've literally took about 15 seconds to do this temperature reading from what you've just seen of the speed test there. So the drive is still hot. Okay, well, let's kind of have a look at that, and then we'll compare that to when I put the same SSD inside of one of the Acasis Enclosures. In fact, you know what? Let me just do this in front here. So let me just whiz all this apart here. Let me just twist that round there. Pop that SSD out there. Okay, now there's the Acasis Enclosure. So what I'm using here is the TBU405Pro M1. As you can see, this is the one with the fan in it. So let me just pop this open. Let me pop that out there. Let me just get that in there. And then I'll pop that little rubber piece on the end here. I'm doing all this in real time just so you can see exactly what's going on. And yes, I know that this is boring, but it's all part of the test. Okay, so that's all clamped on. Now, another thing worth noting here, actually, just quickly, as you might be able to see there, there's still a bit of give there in the lid. What it is, the actual thermal connection inside here with the pads is definitely pushing up against the case. And also as well, it's worth noting, I don't know if we might be able to see it there, but there's indentations on the thermal pad on the Zike here. So those indentations are obviously proven that, you know, when the lid goes down on the Zike, it's definitely in contact with the SSD, because a couple of people had asked whether or not, you know, the thermal pad was properly connecting to the SSD. Yes, it does. And also as well, you can feel a little bit of push on it as well, just at that last bit when you're pushing it on. So definitely both of these enclosures are definitely in contact with the SSD as far as their thermal pads are concerned. Now let me just flip this over. Now of course I was using the supplied cable with the Zike there, so let me just unplug that. And then what I'm using here obviously is, well, not obviously, let me just show you. That's the Thunderbolt 4 cable which comes supplied with some of the Acasis drives. So let me just pop that in there. Sorry, Acasis Enclosure. Sorry, I'm fluffing my words a little bit here because I'm trying to do this as quickly as I can, but in real time so I can show you what's going on. So there we go. There's the Acasis now all connected up. So let me flip back over onto the computer. Okay, so I'm back over onto the Mac, and the first thing that I'm going to do here is to copy the name of the drive there. I'm going to open up Disk Utility, select the root of the drive, click on Erase, paste that name in. Then I'm going to format to APFS using the GUID partition mapping scheme. Click on Erase there, so that should quickly just unmount, format, remount, all the rest of it. There we go. So that's done. Okay, now what I'm going to do is to just launch Balckmagic Disk Utility. Let me just go in here. I've got 5 GB selected for the file size for the testing, and there's the drive there. Let me open that up. So let's run this a few times over. We'll get an idea of what this is doing. Now the thing that you're going to notice straight away is that we are a bit slower on the Acasis enclosure compared to the Zike. However, as we could see before, the Zike absolutely, like, you know, plummeted during, you know, after, like, you know, it was pushed a bit and stuff. So the thing is, whilst the Acasis is slower, the thing is, if this maintains this speed after, like, say 50 minutes or so, then it's going to be way faster than the Zike at that point, only because it won't be slowing down. That's if it does, do you know what I mean? So let's see what happens after 50 minutes here, because if it still maintains anything like these speeds here, it is definitely way faster than the Zike when it comes to proper, like, you know, loads of data being written and stuff like that. So I'm going to call this 2770 for the write. Let me just make a note of that. So 2770 for the write. And I'm going to call it 860, call it 60, so 2860 for the read. Okay, so that'll do for that. So let me exit that. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is to reconnect my other drive. Let me just get in there. Okay, so that should pop up on the desktop momentarily. In fact, let me just open up the Western Digital Acasis combination there. There's that drive there. Let me just select all the files, and just so that you note it is exactly the same, let me go to summary there, and as we can see, 3,738,773 megabytes in size and 20,736 items. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just pop the stopwatch up here, and then I will do a copy here. So copy those and put them into there, paste the 11 things, start the stopwatch. Now don't forget, the use of the stopwatch here is not to do any timing, so I can calculate a manual bit rate for, like, you know, real world speeds and stuff. And the reason why I'm not going to calculate anything here is because the drive that I am copying from is a Crucial P3, and I will already have mentioned this when I've done things with this P3 drive. They're brilliant because you can get like 4 terabytes for like cheaper than any other 4 terabyte NVMe, because it's only a Gen 3. And the thing is, you know, when you first kind of format it and it's kind of fresh, it'll be really fast, like, for quite some time. But what happens is, once the drive starts filling up and whatnot, and due to the type of caching that it does, and it doesn't have DRAM and things like that, it will slow down. Now, as you can clearly see here, that drive is almost completely full. And there's another problem with, like, the P3s, or indeed a lot of SSDs suffer this problem. Once they do get really full, the speeds can be really massively impaired for both writing and reading. So the reason why I don't use this drive to take data from during my real world speed testing is because this drive will be a lot slower than, say, something like the Western Digital or the Samsung would be, you know, once it's like full of like data and it's being used as like the source for like the reading from. So that's the only reason why I don't use that particular SSDs, because it's just too slow at the reading at this point once it's actually all full up and stuff. Anyways, with all that said, let me just start fast forwarding through this, and let's just see where we get up to as far as the speeds of the Western Digital inside this Acasis enclosure after about 50 minutes or so. Okay, so I'm going to stop this here, and as we can see, this has been running for 56 minutes, so let me just stop that folder from copying there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is come to the disk speed test. I'm on 5 gigabytes, and the target drive is going to be the Western Digital. So let me open this and start the speed test. And okay, that's really fast, and so is that. Okay, so as we can see there, after 56 minutes of continuous writing, basically the Western Digital hasn't slowed down. So what we were getting earlier on was 2,770 on the write, and at the moment, you know, we're on 2,720 odd. Yeah, maybe it's dropped down by like 40 megabytes or something, but I'm going to put that
that down to margin of error. And as far as the write speed is concerned, sorry, the read speed, before it was on 2860 and now it's on 2860 odd. So basically we're nearly enough exactly the same here. So what we can clearly see is that after 56 minutes we just haven't really lost any speed whatsoever on the Western Digital when it's inside the Acasis enclosure. So let me just stop that. Actually, before I forget, just give me a second, I'll do a very quick reading here for temperatures. So on the underside here, we are on 32 degrees. Okay, so about 32 degrees there. Now, I'm going to open up the enclosure. Now, the SSD might pop up actually because it is stuck to the, yeah, it's popped up as we can see. And the reason why is because it's actually stuck to the thermal pads there. So definitely it's got a good thermal connection. So let me just test this. 35 degrees C, 37, 36. Okay. Well, I mean, we can definitely see there that the fan inside the enclosure is definitely keeping that SSD like, well, it's cool. Let's just say 37 degrees Celsius is cool, and it's a lot cooler than what the same SSD was with inside the Zike enclosure. Now, it did take me about 30-40 seconds before I did this reading here. So from doing the speed testing to setting the camera up or getting the camera rolling and getting it synced and stuff to finally doing the test, and took about 40-50, let's call it a minute tops, okay? But within a minute, there's no way that will have cooled down drastically beyond what it already is at the moment. So as we can see anyway, the bottom line is that SSD is a ton cooler inside the Acasis enclosure compared to the Zike enclosure. Okay, so to an end summary, and I think it's really clear here, you definitely need to be using an enclosure which has got some kind of cooling in it, preferably, you know, a fan, so actively cooled, when you are using a high-speed Gen 4 NVMe SSD with inside them. Now, the thing here is, as I already said from the outset, this video was meant to be me showing like a really good recommendation with the Zike here, but unfortunately the first two Gen 4s that have tested in it have proven to be problematic with this particular enclosure. And the reason why is really simple. You know, it's a passively cooled enclosure, but it doesn't have enough thermal mass to, well, to absorb and then dissipate the heat fast enough from either of these two NVMe SSDs. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be, you know, a lot of SSDs out there which it will be able to handle. Right now, I don't know what they are, and as to whether they're going to be anything like really fast Gen 4s, I'm not too sure about that either. However, as we can clearly see, the Acasis completely won out because it sustained its read and write speeds even after I did over 50 minutes worth of like dumping files, so writing to the SSD inside the Acasis. Now, the thing is, some people might be thinking, well, you know what? Maybe I only want to put like 5 or 10s of gigabytes onto the disk at any one time, in which case I'll go for the Zike because that clearly is about 600 megabytes per second faster. Well, if you're thinking like that, I'd suggest you don't. And the reason why is because the Zike heats up nonetheless. And what it is, even when you think you're coming from a cold start, all of these enclosures are all warm anyway because there's like heat being generated whether you're using the disk actively or not. As a for instance, there's another Acasis enclosure there. This is actually the one that I was using to like read the files from to both of these enclosures. And well, I can't do a temperature test because the batteries ran out on the camera there, but that is warm to touch. It's not hot or anything, but it's warm to touch, and it's not even in use at the moment. So what I'm pointing out here is that even when you think that these enclosures or external SSDs are laying idle, they're doing something because there's heat being generated, in which case that Zike is always going to be coming from a warm state really quickly moving up through the temperature ranges, whereas this Acasis here with the fanning doesn't. This is always going to be really, really cool when it's just laying idle. And as we can clearly see there during that test, it was really cool by comparison by the time we get to the end of the test as well. Now, it is really sad that I can't find anything for this Zike enclosure, because I really did want to show something inside of it where I could recommend it and what have you. However, I've got to say now, I don't think I can waste any more time with this Zike enclosure, and I'm really grateful that Zike sent it to me, because on paper it really did seem to be like it was going to be awesome and stuff. Now I know that there's going to be people in the comment section going, oh, well, I've got a Zike and I've got this in, and I do this and I do that, and I don't lose any speeds and stuff like that. Well, the thing is, if somebody can show me any other tests on YouTube where somebody does like thorough testing like I do, and especially, you know, putting the drive under stress for maybe 50 minutes or so and then do the speed test, if someone can show me that with a very fast Gen 4 NVMe and show me that these real world speeds are still maintained to be high speeds, then, you know, I'm going to have to readdress things here. However, I don't think that that's going to happen, because the tests that I've been doing are like clearly showing that under like proper stresses and stuff like that, the Zike simply can't handle it. Whereas something like the Acasis with its active coolant definitely can. Anyway, I think that'll do it for this video. And yeah, you know, hopefully it's been useful to someone out there. Now, there will be links to everything used in this video in the description below. And if you still want to buy a Zike case for whatever reason or enclosure, there'll also be a discount code for that as well. So, you know, feel free to get one if you want one, even though I've already shown 2 examples where it kind of does fail. However, if you're into the Acasis stuff, then there will also be discount codes for the Acasis products as well. In fact, the Acasis discount code that I've got is site-wide, so anything that you buy from Acasis. And also as well, I'm going to be receiving some pretty cool stuff, hopefully sooner rather than later, as far as Acasis stuff is concerned. So keep an eye on the channel for that. I can't say too much about it, but keep an eye on the channel because I've got some really cool stuff coming up. Oh yeah, and last thing as well, anybody out there who's into like OBS and game capturing, I've got a really dead long video coming up. Like, which is not like uncommon for me, but this video is going to show you how to do like capture external stuff like PS5s, Xboxes, PCs, capture them to Apple Silicon computer. And the video is like shows you every step of the way on how to do all this with like basically with a UVC capture device, which is an Acasis one, which works really well. We're through to OBS for all the capturing, and then I also do like a very kind of like quick overview on how to do a quick top and tail of your capture with inside DaVinci Resolve, and then what the best export options are for your uploads to YouTube. Now, the other thing with that video as well, I'm using 2 bits of software which are absolutely free. So it's a really, really good, like, you know, demonstration of what you can do on the cheap, as it were, on Apple Silicon as far as your external game capturing is concerned, using yet another fantastic Acasis product. Anyway, I think I've given Acasis enough of a shout out in this video. If you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. A sub to the channel would be absolutely awesome. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.